I'll go with an easy kind of logistical piece. You can pack lighter than you think you need. You don't need as many clothes as you think you need. You don't need all your winter clothes right away. Don't bring all your winter clothes right away. That's horrible. There's a ton of free t-shirts in college. So like, bring like whatever you think you need, bring like half your t-shirts. You'll be fine.
I was really unsure of like who to talk to. You know, like going into, especially Monroe Community College, I didn't really have a lot of contacts. I didn't know anybody that went there. And really branching out and talking to as many teachers as you can, introducing yourself to students and faculty, that's really helpful in just making connections. So I wish I knew that.
Came into Hamilton and right away I was playing football, so right away I had 65 guys I could say hi to on campus, and that's kind of where I made my initial circle of friends. But I guess it was pretty important to me that I branched out more than I did, especially at McQuaid. So I really tried to become friends with like theater kids or kids that played other sports or kids that weren't involved in sports at all. So I went around my dorm, kind of introduced myself, which was pretty important. And I kind of made some good friends with kids on my floor, all of who had different point of views, different experiences than me. So.
I spent a lot of my time in the local coffee shop, so I kind of became friends with like some of the kids on the chess team. So that was kind of interesting. Just completely different group of kids, but it was fun. You know, really diverse group, and so in the coffee shop, yeah, that's where I most of my friends. And at jiu-jitsu.
I found that as the year progresses, you tend to become better and better friends with the guys on your floor, or guys and girls in some schools. And kind of seeing the same group of people every day, you start to get to know the guys, and you get the brotherhood that helps you kind of think of McQuaid. Or you can find the brotherhood that you were missing, essentially, from switching from McQuaid to a university.
For me, it started in my dorm. The first thing when we got there, the upperclassmen told us just keep your door open. And I lived on the first floor, but it happens on any floor in any dorm anywhere really at different levels. But when people walk by the first week of school, they will stop in and say hello. And that's all you need, just a hello and a hello. And maybe they move on and you don't have a conversation at all, but you said hello. And that's a start to a conversation that might be a friendship. You'll have a lot of conversations with people like that first week, and they will go nowhere. And that's fine, because you're going to meet so many different people that if you keep just saying hello and keeping yourself open, you'll eventually find your friends.
Yeah, so at Clarkson they do like floors based on like common interests. So I got placed on the sports floor. So I had all the soccer girls, the lacrosse players, the baseball team was all on my floor with a bunch of like soccer guys. So like we all kept our doors open, and like by the end of the year, like there would be nights on the weekend when our entire floor would be at the same place, doing the same thing together. Like we just all like connected through that common interest, since we all were like open to having friendships with each other because we had that common interest in sports.
At OU, I made most of my initial friends on my floor. Like same thing as these guys are saying. Like everyone kept their doors open, so it's just hop in their rooms and get friends with them. By the end of the year, we were like best friends. I made a lot of friends playing basketball too. Made a lot of friends in my major, so like it's easy to meet kids with common interests in your major. And then second semester, I decided to join a fraternity. So obviously, that's like over 100 brothers right there. They have connections with. And then you get connections with sororities too. So yeah.
So the first semester, my roommate, we kind of talked like over the summer, like on the Facebook groups, like kind of were like, okay, like we can kind of room together. So first semester, we hung out for like a couple weeks, and then we both like moved into our separate friend groups. So after that, we never saw each other. We were only in the room at the same time. We were both sleeping. So we didn't talk a lot. Then February break, I left a little bit earlier than he did, and I got back. All of his stuff was moved out. Never heard from him, never saw him again.
So like I just got a single for the rest of the second semester, which I mean is nice, but so like I mean, if I could give advice, like no matter what, like just don't piss off your roommate, like don't make him hate you, because then your life will be miserable. Because like at the very least, you can just be in the room together and be fine without having to worry about like him taking your stuff or constantly like fighting each other, and just get along. It's pretty easy from there.
Anybody else have a roommate, good, bad?
So my roommate actually also went to McQuaid. He was in our year, and I found that since we both had similar interests, it actually really worked out. And I have had friends that have had that happen, or they've had some horror stories. But either like one of two things will happen. Either you and your roommate will get along pretty well, you'll be on the same page, and you guys will hang out every now and again. Or kind of what Max was saying, where it'll break into friend groups, and at the end of the day, then you get exposure to their friends and you meet more people. So it's really a net positive, unless it goes poorly. And that it's luck of the draw, but you can try to find people with similar interests. A lot of schools will have Facebook groups to find roommates if you don't already know someone that's going to the same school that you are.
For me, I was kind of terrified of rooming because Notre Dame is completely random. Then they make sure that you are rooming with someone that is outside of your state, which is a weird rule, but they want to force you to be roommates with someone that is not going to be exactly like you, which is like a pretty terrifying thing. So my roommate and I, we clicked, we were awesome, and I got pretty lucky. But I think as roommates go, you don't have to be best friends with your roommate, but it's very easy to just be good roommates and get along. Like there are very few people I know that are like, oh, I hate my roommate. Like you don't have to hang out together, but I think like you'll be relieved to find out like it's not that hard to room with someone.
Talk about like your schedule. So Max, tell me like what was your Wednesday like second semester? Walk us through your day.
So second semester, I got into my business major classes. And the great thing about Clarkson and the way they did it was business classes are 75 minutes long. They run either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. So the way my schedule worked out, I had no classes on Friday. I had 2 or 3 classes a day taking 18 credits, which is more than most of my other classmates, and I still was able to manage my time well. I had Fridays off, which was great, and if you can do it, I highly recommend it. But yeah, so I mean, I just took like 2, 3 75-minute classes. Second semester, I think I started at 11 a.m. and went to like 2 p.m. maybe. Like it's really not that bad after your first semester when you get to choose what classes you take, when you take them, and you can really just choose what works for you based on what classes you need to take to graduate.
How about you, Mike? What was your schedule like?
Yeah, so on Wednesdays, in the spring, I had to wake up at 7 a.m. for spring practice, which was 7:30 to 8:45. Then after that, I would I would go back to my room, shower, get breakfast with my friends. And then I had a pretty full day of classes. I had econ in the morning, math after that, and then an American Studies class after that. I would try to squeeze in a nap in between classes as best as I could. And then after that, it was like I'd probably be working in the library from 6:30 to 11:30 with a break for dinner in between.
I always think one of the most difficult things or different things for kids is just your day looks different. Here, so you're in high school, you're in class, especially here, you're in class from 8 till roughly 3 o'clock. So essentially you're in class about 35 hours a week. So you go off to college and all of a sudden you're in class maybe 15 hours a week, 14, 15 hours a week. And I've always found, the kids that are successful tend to be the ones that can manage that extra 20 hours of kind of free time. And those who really struggle with that, those are the kids who really they can't figure it out. Can anybody talk to that a little bit? Just the difference between the two?
Well, on my Wednesdays, I had one class from 8 to 8:50 in the morning, which was bizarre because the rest of the day was free for me. So I volunteered at a nonprofit from 1 to 4, but from that time, 8:50 to 1, I'd usually go to the cafe, and for the majority of the semester, I worked on my transfer application and whatnot. But that kind of plays into Mr. Seraphine's question of finding time to utilize all that extra free time. And one of the things about college is that nobody's really telling you to succeed, and you have to find that intrinsic motivation to sit down and do all of your work, because you have the opportunity to go back to your dorm room, watch 3 or 4 episodes of Netflix, and then go eat dinner, and there's all-you-can-eat buffet. There's a lot of margin for error. So really finding that intrinsic motivation is super important to staying focused and staying disciplined.
I find the schedule situation gets better with the second semester as you can pick your classes. So I had an 8:30 every other day the first semester, and I knew that was not for me. I'm not a morning person. I was barely awake during that course. And so I made my schedule accordingly for the second semester. And the way that I set up my schedule, I had 4 classes on Monday, including a 3-hour. And then Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday I had 1 class, and then Wednesday I had 3 classes. So really, on having only 1 class 3 days a week is a bit of a change from high school, coming from having, let's say, 6 or 7. And so kind of what Will was saying was finding that intrinsic motivation to actually do something with your day is kind of the hardest part. And once you kind of get into the swing of things, you figure out what time you have to work with, your roommate schedule, how that works into the picture. And so, for example, I would do laundry on Tuesdays or Thursdays because I had the whole day to do it. And I would go ahead and I'd work on either schoolwork or work on my business in that free time. And that being able to pick my schedule allowed me to kind of restructure my life in a way in which I would be more likely to succeed. And that's definitely a benefit of college.
For me, even second semester, my schedule is kind of constricted. If you're in STEM at all, they're going to make you take labs. And labs are really, really tough because they're 3 hours once a week, which makes scheduling like horrible. It's a pain. So I take all my curriculum in the morning, and then once a week, on 2 days, I have like a bio lab and like a chem lab. And so on those days, I have like this little bit of time in between that's like kind of like I can't just do nothing with it because it's too much time that I feel unproductive. So I started taking a 20-minute nap, and the 20-minute nap is incredible. like if I could have taken a 20-minute nap in high school, I feel like my afternoon would have been so productive. So I'm not talking not like an hour, not like you're wasting time, but like enough where you take it, you set your alarm for 20 minutes, and you wake up feeling refreshed and motivated for your afternoon. I highly recommend fitting a nap into your free time. It really depends on my week. So I go out like once or twice a week. If anyone says they party every day in college, like they're a liar. It's not possible to do work and party every single day of the week. But there is opportunities to go out and have fun. And so my Friday and Saturday would be the nights I'd go out. One day I'd probably go off campus to like an off-campus house. Another night I'd just like hang in the door with my buddies. And then if I go out Friday, Saturday, I know that Sunday I'm waking up early and I do work like the whole day. So if you're gonna go out and be social, which there's plenty of opportunity to do so, it's just another part of like growing up. You just have to schedule your time accordingly. I know if I'm going out here, I'm waking up at this time and I'm doing my work here. That's how you can balance, having fun in college and also getting the academics and work you need to do done.
As for the drugs and alcohol scene, I kind of found it that it was pretty easy to avoid. Like somebody offers you drugs, you simply say, no man, I'm not really into that stuff. And they, for the most part, they completely respect your decision, which is pretty cool. I mean, not cool that they're doing drugs or anything. Yeah, I feel like if you're not into any of that stuff, it's pretty easy to avoid. At least at Hamilton, there's a sober living, and there's sober dorms that you can choose to live in. There's sober groups that you can choose to be a part of, and yeah, a couple of my friends just weren't into drinking at all, and it really didn't affect our friendship at all. Still was just as good of friends with them as anyone else. So yeah, it's pretty easy to avoid if you want to avoid it.
Yeah, I think you always hear horror stories about horrific things that happen on campus and kids with alcohol poisoning. And I mean, there's no shortage of those stories around just in this area. But I also think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's never been a time on college campuses when there's more opportunities and activities that are, quote, drug, alcohol free and things to do. So I think, in the past, maybe even as recently as 10 years ago, you kind of felt like an outcast on a college campus. I hear that from kids. If you weren't into the drugs and drinking scene, you kind of felt like, what do I do? I think that's changed. And maybe I'm naive, but I think that's what my kids told me at least. Yes, no? Plenty to do if that's not your thing?
They told us like week one, like if you're gonna drink, obviously, well, my RA talking, he's like, don't let me see it because then I have to write you up. But he's like, here's this list of things on Friday night that are offered. Here's this list on Saturday night that are offered. And I feel like I speak for most college campuses is that no one is forcing you to drink. There's no peer pressure there. Like if you don't drink, cool. If you drink, cool. If you drink a little bit, that's fine. You are like if you get alcohol poisoning, that is fully your responsibility. No one is forcing your hand to do anything. And you can be a responsible adult and just have a good time, or simply choose to have a good time at like whatever Friday night, Saturday night, non-alcohol related stuff that is offered at the campus.
Yeah, I mean, you'll choose like what you do. Like I had friends that went out 7 nights a week. I had friends that never went out. I had friends that would go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Like you really get to choose what you want to do and what you're comfortable with. Clarkson's similar to what Tyler was saying. Like every Friday and Saturday night in the student center, they would show a movie from the local movie theater. So like one weekend they had Avengers Endgame. That if you didn't want to go out to a party, you could go and you could sit down and you could watch a movie for a couple hours. Like colleges will try to give you stuff to do. So if you don't want to drink or do drugs, that you're not just sitting in your dorm room alone. Like they'll give you the opportunities. Like you just really choose like what you're comfortable with. And like if you know that if you go out drinking, you're not going to do homework the next day, then maybe you shouldn't go out every night. But if you think you can handle it, then I mean, it's really your call. Like no one's going to force you to drink more than you want. Like everyone, like you'll find friends that do whatever you do, and you really just get to choose how you want to live your college life.
So my roommate did not drink or do anything the entire first semester, and I just want to make it clear that you can go out and still choose not to drink and do that sort of thing. And so you at Lemoyne, much like at the other colleges, there's a lot to do on a weekend, whether it's a movie or activities that the student programming board puts on. But even if there are activities that, let's say a party or something, no one's going to force you to drink or anything of that sort. It's really just you having to make your own decisions as an adult. And really, college is the first time where you're treated essentially as an adult, making your own decisions, and what you do with that opportunity is essentially up to you.
It was more just the first semester, first couple weeks. My little brother was starting to play football, and my parents were sending me videos of him playing, and made me really miss him. But I think it was only like the first couple of weeks I really missed my parents, really missed my brother. But I mean, I could talk to them on the phone anytime I wanted to. Once I started making better, like I started making good friends, it kind of all went away. So I guess, sorry for a pretty bad answer.
Anybody else homesick at all?
I wasn't homesick, but just because you're not homesick doesn't mean that your family doesn't miss you, especially your mother. Please call her. She will ring you over and over and over again. If you do not, just call her first. It's just so much easier because, especially if you're the first one going off to college, just like put some time aside. Just know like I'm calling my mom and she's gonna want to talk for a while. Because even if I'm feeling great at college, she misses you. Trust me.
Don't buy your books. You will never use them unless you need it for like online homework. Like classes, like all the resources that you actually need will be put online or on some way for you to get them, whether your teacher prints them out or whatever. Like, teachers will usually put their PowerPoints online that you can go back and look at. So unless you're the kind of kid that needs to study by reading a textbook, it's just a waste of money. It really is just a waste of $200 for a book that you're going to use for a semester and not open.
I always kind of felt the class out for like the first 2 weeks, and I got a good feel for the teachers' understanding and how they were going to teach the course. For some of my teachers, they made it point blank, like, you will use the book this class and you need to buy it, otherwise you'll fail. But feel the class out for a couple weeks. One of my classes even said you don't even need to buy the book. I don't know why they have it in the syllabus. So take time to keep that in the back of your mind.
I would second what Will just said about filling out the class. I bought all my books before class started and then ended up not using any of them the first semester, with the exception of one of them. And the second semester, it was different. So it's different teacher to teacher, and I would just feel it out. And if you do get the books, if they're over, I'd say $100, I'd rent them, because quite frankly, that way you're not spending a whole lot of money if you do not end up using the textbook. But of course, that depends on program to program and school to school and teacher to teacher.
Yeah, to echo what Mike said, I would almost always rent. Like, you may buy it thinking you're gonna sell it again, but it ends up you just scrambling. You say to like a guy in your dorm, like, hey, you want this for like 20 bucks? And then you lose all that money in something you could have rented. Also, I would try and find upperclassmen in your major who have taken the course, because even better than a teacher, they'll just give it to you straight. Like, a teacher would say, yeah, you need to buy this book because you need to do these readings. But ask an upperclassman who really knows, oh, you just need to do this to succeed or whatnot. They'll give you the most direct and probably the best answer.
Anybody spend a chunk of money? How much do you spend?
Well, just on organic chemistry, they made me spend $180 just to rent, which was just, but that was like a class where I verified before, they're like, you will fail this class if you do not have the textbook. I'm like what can you do? Like,
Also, if you don't know upperclassmen, what Tyler was saying, the website Rate My Professor, #1 is great for picking courses, and #2, they will often tell you if you need the textbook or not in the comments about the teachers. So Rate My Professor is probably the biggest resource that's going to be the most helpful to you in college.
At Clarkson, I had a meal plan where I got 21 meals a week, and it resets every week. So I got 3 meals a day. Usually they're all the same price, so you can really just choose like the one, I'd say the one that gives you the most food. Whether like if you're at a big school that has like Chipotle's or Moe's on campus, like stuff like that, get one that has money because you'll want to go eat there rather than the dining hall because they're not usually all that good. But if you have like a college that gives you like an all access, like unlimited swipes, I'd say get that because you never know how many like small meals in a day you're going to get in between classes, instead of like only having 3 where you can go and say, okay, I need to eat 3 big meals so I don't go hungry later in the night and have to spend tons of money on like pizza or Chinese food at 11 o'clock at night.
I would say be careful about overbuying the meal plan, because if you get unlimited food and the food is not very good, then you're not going to get your money's worth, quite frankly. And I like to make the joke that my campus is an Uber Eats campus because the food is not all that great. And you'll find that food is pretty difficult to produce for that many people without a bit of a dip in quality. It's not going to be the McQuaid dining hall, I'm afraid to say. And you're going to have to kind of feel it out for the college. Of course, some schools have better food than others, but I wouldn't go out and buy the biggest meal plan because after a while the food gets pretty gross.
I would advise against any meal plan with the 21 swipes because I had 14 swipes and 500 like flex points. The flex points were just dollars that I could spend at like there's like a smash burger, a Subway, just stuff on campus. Most students do not even use all 14 swipes because very rarely do students actually go to breakfast. Unless you're like an 820 guy, like a Rise and Shine guy, which most college students are not, they don't eat breakfast. They'll maybe have just a box of cereal in their room that they eat and then they go. They won't use a whole swipe on it. So I think if you just use the 14 for lunch and dinner, for most students, that'll be fine. And I would err towards more flexibility, more you can use on the local restaurants than get stuck with the 21 in the dining hall.
What I want to preface this with is I kind of had a purpose going into MCC, and ever since sophomore year, I kind of had it in the back of my mind where I wanted to go to Cornell. And senior year, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to study, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take this year, I'm going to go to MCC. But I always had that driver in the back of my mind of getting into Cornell. So when I first went into the halls at MCC, I was, a little bit scared. There's older people, there's younger people. Like in one of my astronomy classes, I had a 70-year-old couple that were auditing the course. And then there was like an ex-Marine guy who would tell all these crazy stories. But finding the right resources in the teachers and using my professor, I found some of the best teachers that I've ever had, like rivaling some at McQuaid. Especially my advanced composition teacher helped me out a ton with my transfer essay. Living at home was definitely actually kind of nice because I had my nice bed, and being at McQuaid all these years, you spend half or 3/4 of your life here, it seems. And I really grew in my relationship with my parents a lot more, and I got to know them a lot more, just having a little bit more free time. So really the most important thing that I had from MCC was developing intrinsic motivation and realizing that your teachers are there to help you out, and that was really important. So.
In terms of orientation, I'd say go to every event that contains the people that you live with. Like if it's a floor, a residence hall, like even just a floor meeting, go to those because those are people you're going to see every day. You want to be on their good side, you want to like them. It'll just make your entire life easier. As for ones that are like more school-wide, I mean, if you're really concerned about making friends, go. If not, it's really not that big of a deal. There's not a whole lot of useful information that is given out. Maybe a campus tour if you've never visited. But other than that, if you're really trying to make friends, go, because that's the best way to meet people the first couple days. But other than that, I'd say, unless it's like containing your floor, there's not a huge point in going.
Anybody else in orientations, good or bad?
I'd say as a whole, they're awkward and uncomfortable, but they're awkward and uncomfortable for everyone else. So through that suffering, you kind of get brought together. But it's really, there's no good way to have you jump into the college because it's going to be so radically different than what you're used to. So I'd say the best orientation is just the first 2 weeks and just getting into the swing of things and finding the new normal, more so than any program that the school itself puts on.
I would say if you're going to a large university, that orientation is pretty important because there's like so many resources that you might not have even thought of, and so many different buildings and like things that you can learn during orientation that I would say are pretty important.
Yeah, I feel like across the board, all the McQuaid students I've talked to have felt thoroughly prepared. That doesn't necessarily mean that what you're going to do is easy, but I have friends that came out of other high schools from across the country who are just like, I am not prepared for this. Like, if everyone's struggling, you're going to be struggling at least the least. You're going to be okay.
Yeah, so the work, like McQuaid, at the very least, it teaches you how to do the work in a time crunch. So, like, if you need to write an essay about it tomorrow, in college, you'll be able to. Like, I know friends that their first year English class taught them how to use a comma. Like, you went to McQuaid, you know how to do that. Like, the academics will shift. But, like, for me personally at Clarkson, I'm not the hardest worker, but I still finished all of my schoolwork for the fall semester in the first 2 weeks. Like, not doing anything different than what I would do at McQuaid, just sitting around in class, doing homework, and 2 weeks in, my homework for the semester is done. So like, McQuaid will help you just because you'll be at a level, probably at one of the higher ends compared to your classmates. So like really, like there aren't many schools in which you'll be struggling the first couple of months of school to do well academically.
I would not get your hopes up to finish all your work in the first 2 weeks. I did not do that.
I'm also transferring.
I have a job. I'm currently a tutor for biology, and it's not that bad. It's just 2 hours like a week, so I just treat it as like another class. That's, I think, the best way to treat the job. Just get consistent hours and treat it like you're going to a class. Like any other thing, just put it in your schedule.
Is that a work-study job, or just a job you got in your own?
Just a job.
Anybody else have a job?
So I work as a independent contractor for a marketing agency, and I found that having a job actually helps me to manage my time better, because with all of those free hours in the day, it's really easy to do nothing, oddly enough. And so actually having things on my schedule and getting involved with sports and other activities and clubs, I found helps you to manage your time better as you have more going on.
My fall semester microeconomics class had this one professor that I ended up in the spring semester having for 2 more classes. So I was just by having him for 3 classes over the year, I was able to he knew my name, even in a class of 50, 60 people. And then when I was applying to transfer, I was able to go to him and be like, hey, you know what I can do in the classroom. You've had me for 3 classes at this point, and he wrote one of my recommendation letters. So it's definitely important you don't want to just be a name on your professor's grade book. Whether that's at a big school, talking to your professor, at a small school, just casually doing whatever you need to do to get to know them so that they know you, is what I'd say my best advice is.
Do you find professors accessible? How's the whole office hour thing work?
So in the syllabus, usually the professor will put up their office hours Monday, Wednesday, 12 to 3. And then as an extra measure, I always emailed them beforehand and said, are you available anytime during your office hours on Wednesday? And then they'd always get back to me. And to go off of your question, establishing a relationship with my English professor was super important because he helped me a lot with that transfer process. And my accounting professor also wrote a letter of recommendation for transferring as well. So yeah, it's really important.
And even office hours, they'll put the times in the syllabus, but they will always accommodate you. If you're I'm sorry, I have this, that, I can't make it, they'll give you I have all these times, let's meet. They want to meet with you, they want to talk to you and meet their students. Even if it's a large class, even more so, they want to know who's in their class, but they don't have the time to learn during class time.
You can go to office hours even if you don't have a problem. Just
That's true.
You can go there and just meet your teacher. If you have a big class, that might be a good thing to do. Because quite frankly, if you know your teacher, they know what you're capable of and what to expect, and you build up that relationship, then not only will they be more accommodating to you and be able to help you if you have any issues, but for example, if you have a good relationship with a teacher and they're a good teacher, then you can go ahead and take all their classes as you know that it will work.
like 0 days. Maybe day one you're like, it's weird sitting next to a girl, and then you're like you're good. You'll be okay.
So you had a tough time.
It's not that different. It's crazy to think, I was just girls will just answer questions, and it's just weird to see girls talking in a classroom, I guess. It's just I don't know, it just blows my mind for a little bit. But then I don't know, you just get used to it. They're just students just like you.
Yeah, so for me, like I said, I chose a school that was the cheapest, so obviously it's too late for you to avoid that mistake, but oh well, I guess. If you have younger siblings, tell them, choose the right school regardless of the price. But in terms of what happened, I decided I wanted to transfer pretty much around that second week point, because I'm a lazy person. Like, I knew something was wrong when I finished all my homework in 2 weeks. Like, that shouldn't happen in college. Like, so I was like, okay. And then I started to think about it, and I was like, okay, the academics here, like, aren't really fitted for me, that now I have nothing to do. So, I mean, transferring, like, it's not a bad thing. Like, hundreds and thousands of people do it every year. So don't be, like, afraid to look into that. Like, if there's a point when you're like, I don't like it here, I'm not happy, feel free to look into it, talk to your parents, and just see, like, what other options there are. Because at that point, you'll know what you like in a college and what you don't. Like, going into it, you're just kind of, like, guessing what you're going to like. Once you have that experience, you know, okay, I like being at a big school because I like having so many people and so many opportunities, or you don't, and vice versa. Academic-wise, you know what you like about it and what you don't. So it really helps that if you do decide to transfer, you're really able to narrow down what you're looking for in a college, and that I can't guarantee that it's going to happen because I haven't transferred yet. But I imagine that this next experience is going to be a lot better for me than my past one.
I guess there was a point at which I chose the program that I wanted to go into, and I was talking with my guidance counselor at MCC, and she said, hey, well, you have a lot of activities that you're in. Why don't you look at the ILR school at Cornell? So once I did like probably 10 hours of research into it, then I was like, all right, this is the right school. So putting a lot of research into whatever school if you're thinking about transferring is really important. And I can't attest to what next year is going to be like, but I'm pretty sure that I'll like it. So. I did live off campus, but I actually didn't have a tough time getting involved because the majority of kids there were commuters. But the time that I spent in the cafe doing work, I actually met a bunch of cool people and also hung out in the multicultural center, which is like diversity club, I guess. And I never thought, I'd be going into that. But with my free time, I scheduled my classes accordingly, where I didn't have enough time to go home, so I would have to stay on campus. So I actually didn't find it that hard commuting.
I'd say that if you're feeling like a class is hard, talk to your professor. Because they'll tell you, like, look, like, I'll work with you and make it so that you can pass. Or tell you, like, look, dropping it and trying again might be the option, at least in my experience.
I would say for dropping, it really depends on whether or not that course specifically matters for your major. If it's like, I have to get this Gen Chem done to continue my path, you're going to have to take it eventually. So if you feel underprepared, I had friends who did that, and they're now in like an online summer program. There are ways around dropping classes to get them done if they're required. So if you feel not prepared, like, drop it. If you think you honestly, no matter how much work you put in, cannot do well in a class, I totally advise to drop, especially if it's just like, I'm checking off like this arts requirement or whatnot. Choose a class you're interested and hopefully you're good at. If there's options, feel free to drop. I think dropping in college is much easier than like dropping a course in high school.
I'd like to also bring up the point that at McQuaid we didn't really have curves, but I found that in college they're definitely more common. So it's actually significantly harder to fail a course than you might imagine. And the thing is, the curve works both ways. So you could work your butt off and get an A, but someone might get a 60 and end up with a B+. So of course it depends course to course. Generally science courses are not curved, but with the exception, with that exception in mind, I'd say just about every other class has a curve of some sort, or at least at Lemoyne College.
I didn't bring a car, but I would definitely recommend bringing a car if you can. It's like you're going to want to go grocery shopping whenever you want, not to rely on other people.
I'd say feel it out. I had my car for about half the semester, and if a lot of people and a lot of your friends have their cars, then most colleges go one of two ways. Either no one really has cars or everyone has cars, and you don't want to be the only one with the car, because then you're the one that ends up driving to everything, and that ends up being your money you're spending on gas. And so I'd really play it by ear with that sort of thing, because the parking passes aren't cheap if you are allowed to have a car as a freshman.
Yeah, so I went to a school where you're not allowed to have a car as a freshman. And I mean, people abide by the rule, but I have a lot of friends that all like cars. So if you see no freshmen are allowed to have cars, I would say it's a guideline, but there's definitely ways around it.
I don't think it's a suggestion, Mike.
Yeah. I don't know, like, the majority of my friends had cars, even though we weren't supposed to. So I'm just saying, like, alright, you know,
I think one of the problems with having a car is oftentimes it becomes, hey, can we use your car, or can you give me a ride? It becomes a hassle and a lot of things sometimes. So I think that you'll hear that all the time. Can I borrow your car? Can you give me a ride here? Can I use your car for the night or whatever? That's something you have to be prepared to deal with, I think.
The second week back into spring semester, I got food poisoning from the dining hall. And so I was thrown up in my dorm room, and the RA had to call Campo. I got taken to the hospital, and like I got sent home the next morning. That week I was still having symptoms, so luckily I was close enough to home that I went home for that weekend. I was able to sleep in my own bed. Then the next weekend I got an ulcer. So I had to have, so it wasn't a great time, but like being sick, like it sucks. Like make sure like you're on good terms with your roommates so they can bring you food. Like if nothing else, like you're not gonna want to walk to the dining hall to eat, but you need to. Being sick, I'd say if you're going far away, it's gonna be harder because like luckily I was able to go home, and then when I needed to go to the hospital to deal with my ulcer, my mom was able to come up and help me through that process. Not everybody has that, so I can't say what that would be like. But for me, it's really not that much different. Being at home, you just have to know what to do and be able to take care of yourself.
Did you use like the health center on campus?
Yeah, I went to the health center a couple times just for the ulcer, just because I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like I had a fever, and they were really helpful. There's only so much that they can do, especially at a small school. But they'll at least be able to tell you, like, okay, you need to go to urgent care, or you might have strep, here's some medicine. It really just depends on the school, but the biggest thing, and my advice would be, like, know your own body and know how to take care of yourself. Like, know that you need to get out of bed, or it's just going to make it worse. Like, you need to eat, or it's not going to go away kind of thing. And you need to be able to do that, because mom and dad aren't there to force you to eat anymore.
Your professors will also be very accommodating with that sort of thing. It's if you go up to your professor in the beginning of class, or you shoot them an email and say I'm going to the health center, they're not going to tell you no. And I found that the health center is pretty accommodating. It's fast. I think most colleges they're walk-ins, so that's definitely something that I think everyone uses at least once a semester for either cold or strep or whatever it happens to be. And then if you're unfortunate enough to have to go to the urgent care or the ER, I'd say it's good to know where those are in relation to the campus. So for example, we went sledding one night, and my buddy tore his ACL immediately after going down the hill the first time. So the fact that we knew where the urgent care was definitely made that whole process easier. So I just make sure that you know generally where things are in proximity to you in case you have to know where they are.
Keep your mind open with what you want to do. I thought I wanted to do economics and management, but I ended up going into a completely different field because of some of the extracurriculars I was involved in. Parents, if your son is commuting from home, give him a little bit of space and kind of let him have a college experience a little bit, you know. But for kids that are going off to college, those parents, I say talk to your kids often, because I think even if they're too stubborn to call you, they will miss you a little bit. So
I would say find something new to get involved in. If you would have told me that I was going to be playing rugby, I would reply with something along the lines of, I don't want to be broken. But here I am, still alive. And just being able to step outside of my comfort zone and try something new is something that will not only help you meet new people, but I'd say get farther in life, being able to step out of your comfort zone.
I would say try and fall in love with your major or whatever you study. It's not high school anymore. You don't have to take like a bunch of courses that you're not interested in. Maybe first semester a little bit, but by like second semester and then moving into your sophomore year, you should have a good idea of, you don't need to know what major you want to do or what you want to do when you're out of college, but like know what you like and know what you plan to study and what you enjoy, because college is fun, but it's also it should be fun to learn what you're learning at college.
How about for parents?
Oh, for parents? Oh. If you send your son food, he will be very appreciative.
I would just say, like, try to get as involved as you can and make sure you make your college experience fun. Like, make sure that academics come first. Sometimes that can be hard because there's a lot of distractions going on. So you just got to keep that in the back of your mind. Keep academics first because that's what you're there for. And for parents, I would say keep in touch with your kids and like don't worry as much as you think because they're going to learn from their experiences and they'll be okay.
My advice for you guys, build a strong relationship with your RA. You don't want your RA to not like you. My RA actually convinced me to join the football team after soccer didn't work out. So like I had that experience. Like he'll make sure you get involved on campus. At the end of the semesters, like I would see my RA out and like we'd have a good time together.
Word of advice for the students, don't make a group of friends and then completely close yourself off because you already have friends. Like keep trying to meet new people, especially people that maybe aren't a typical type of friend that you would have. So like kids that are aren't into sports or are in the theater or like politics, just try to befriend as many people as you can. And then for parents, I guess kind of maybe take a step back from your kid's life once you send them to college. I know that probably is a little hard, but I guess don't try to control everything like you did when they